Hey tankers, and welcome back to World of Tanks with PR154, where we are covering this thing. This is the premium tier 8 Czech tank destroyer, the ShPTK-TVP 100. Bit of a mouthful there, so for the purposes of this exercise, we'll call it ShPTK. Hopefully that sticks, and if it does, well, you heard it here first. Now, I cover content across a variety of different platforms, and one of the things I like to do when there's a new tank out is actually write a nice little article about it. I have a page on Wix that I put most of these reviews on. Now I will put the link to the to this particular review for ShPTK in the description below. Now, hopefully you are catching this video from my Wix article, in which case, thank you for swinging by, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you are one of the too long didn't read types, and that's why you watch YouTube videos, well, I've got you covered as well. We actually open this article with a too long didn't read version, where we basically run through the pros and cons of the tank. For starters, well, it's got a turret, and that's going to provide much greater flexibility and ease of engagement than you otherwise would with a fixed casemate vehicle. You have, amongst turreted tank destroyers, the best damage per minute and penetration at tier, where your standard rounds are penetrating for 270 millimeters and your premium heat shells penetrating for 330. Of course, also not to be sniffed at is your high explosive, which penetrates at 100 millimeters. So I generally regard anything at 80 millimeters and above as pretty good for high explosive, so 100 millimeters is just excellent for high explosive. The main armament is quite accurate. 0.29 meters per 100 meters is your base dispersion, with a rapid aim time of 1.25 seconds and minimal dynamic dispersion. That is the residual dispersion that you get if you move the turret or move the hull or traverse the hull. So that enables you to bring your gun onto target, aim in very quickly to your minimum possible dispersion, and fire in the shortest possible time frame. You do end up with above average forward and reverse speeds for tier, and good acceleration thanks to the high power to weight ratio. That also feeds into quite a high rate of turret and vehicle traverse, which again all aids that ability to bring your gun, lay the gun on target, and engage it with minimal possible dispersion. And that all sounds pretty good. Almost to the point that the tank sounds overpowered, but there are a few cons that need to be understood. For starters, the vehicle has quite low alpha damage, 250 hit points per shot. Now, you do get 420 hit points per shot with the high explosive, but, well, the high explosive is not going to be useful in all situations. But this low alpha damage is compensated by a relatively high rate of fire. As a base, you'll be sending a shell down range every 5.2 seconds, and of course that can only be improved further by crew and equipment. The vehicle has quite a low muzzle velocity, even on the standard AP shells. We normally regard 1150 meters per second as being a fairly adequate muzzle velocity. You only get about 900 meters per second with ShPTK. And that only deteriorates further once you start fiddling around with premium ammunition as well. So you will notice that with your gameplay, and it does somewhat impact the ability of the vehicle to play as a red line sniper. Unfortunately, you don't have a lot of gun depression, only 6 degrees, so that can limit your ability to work ridge lines for cover. You end up with a lot of exposure of the tank if you come over the top of a ridge line and attempt to use 6 degrees of gun depression. So that can lead you more often than not playing from the back. But unfortunately, your base view range and base concealment aren't all that fantastic, and they are things that really require buffing through crews and equipment. And of course, if you're playing from the back, well, that's going to limit your ability to hit targets at range, particularly if they're moving, given the longer time of flight owing to the slower muzzle velocity. So these are a few things that you'll need to manage, and your ability to manage them will really be down to the confidence that you have in the development of your crew and the equipment that you put on the tank. The vehicle is quite poorly armored. Frontally, it probably won't get eaten up by high explosive shells in the way that the likes of Scorpion G and others will. But if you bounce anything, will consider yourself very lucky. And being a thinly skinned open-topped vehicle, it is highly vulnerable to self-propelled gunfire. You can move forward to sort of offset your poor muzzle velocity, but it requires a lot of confidence in your view range and concealment stats in order to realize that. You do have excellent damage per minute. I think it's like 2900 DPM, which you can boost up to 4900 DPM with the high explosive shells if that's what your target is into. Again, you don't have a lot of armor to really be relying on trading down on damage per minute. One thing that this vehicle has, I guess, with the lower alpha, in order to realize your DPM, you need to fire and you need to keep firing. Whereas if you're running a Rheinmetall Borsig Waffenträger with the 15 centimeter gun, for example, for one single exposure, you're going to be able to do 750 hit points of damage potentially. Whereas for this, you have to hang your ass out for the better part of 10 or 11 seconds in order to cause the equivalent amount of damage. So that is a bit of a downside to the low alpha, and it is something that needs to be managed about this tank. We will talk a little bit about Battle Pass as a marathon mechanism. Now, in the past, marathons have tended to be this exercise where there's, say, 10 stages, and each stage has incrementally higher difficulty. That you can get through the first few stages and you think, oh, that's easy. I've got a 10 or 20, 30% discount on this vehicle already. That's pretty awesome. But then you look at the total amount of experience that you actually need to pick up, and you find you've actually need to get up to stage 4 on the first day if you want a linear experience collection rate throughout the event, to the point that getting that 100% discount requires just an inordinate amount of experience points and grinding. So that can throw a lot of players. Most of the time you'll also find the tank is overvalued. So typically a new release premium tank through a marathon is worth $100 Australian. If it's tier 9, $125 seems to be about the going rate. But then, as we've seen, the Stridsvagn K has just made its sales debut at $73 Australian, where you were otherwise being suggested that you could buy it for up to $125 Australian. So it's about a 30 to 40% discount off the marathon rate. That's been the traditional side of things. They've stepped away from that this season. They have now introduced another chapter to the Battle Pass. Now, it's not necessarily easy to do still. You will need to, in order to pick this up, whatever you're doing in Battle Pass, you'll have to basically stop it, and you'll have to move to Chapter 4. Now, that was something that really puzzled me about this season, because they gave you the ability to pause your progress on a chapter and go to a new chapter, or you could do the chapters in a different order. And it had me wondering, well, why the hell would you do that? Why do you need to do that? It seems a bit pointless. But now that Chapter 4 has come up, then it tends to make a lot of sense. So this marathon will run from basically now until the early hours of the 23rd of May. Now, previously, we had actually charted the minimum amount of progression that you'd need to make in Season 7 of Battle Pass. We had initially seen that you had a start date of the 1st of March and a completion date of the 30th of May, very early hours of 30th of May, so we didn't count it. So essentially 90 days to collect 150 stages worth of Battle Pass points, where there's 50 points per stage, so 7,500 points. They would have needed to pick up about 83 points per day, and were quite happily noodling through that until the Queen of the Night article dropped on the 7th of May, and that told us the rules for this particular chapter. So it's a special chapter. It'll be starting right about now, and it comprises 40 stages of 50 points per stage. So there's a total of 2,000 Battle Pass points involved, and you've got 11 full days to complete it. That works out to be an average of 182 Battle Pass points per day that you need to pick up. Bearing in mind, you can pick up 70 of those Battle Pass points through the completion of daily missions and your bonus missions, which leaves you a residual of 112, which need to be picked up through grinding those tier 6 to tier 10 vehicles that still haven't reached their Battle Pass points cap. Now, each vehicle It does have a cap on the amount of battle pass points it can earn. Once you hit that cap, you get a nice little boost. So there's been a few of you out there who've been preparing away and actually getting your tier 6 and tier 7 vehicles right up to that edge that if you play 1 or 2 battles in them, you'll tip over the edge, and you'll be able to pick up that completion bonus for that vehicle. But then once expended, that vehicle won't actually earn any more battle pass points. So something to be a little bit mindful of. Let's pretend you don't do any of that, but you complete all your daily missions and your bonus mission. That still leaves 112 battle pass points per day, which the average player will take 25 battles in tier 6 to 10 vehicles every day, with average performance in order to make the consistent daily progress in this marathon. So do bear that in mind. Now, we did factor in that brown pants moment effect that came in when that article dropped on the 7th of May, on the assumption that everyone that was quite happily noodling through at the average minimum of 83 battle pass points per day would suddenly think, oh, okay, well, I need to complete chapter 4, but I also want to complete whatever chapter I'm on, bearing in mind these could be done in any given order. That meant, let's assume you made the minimum average daily progress in chapter 4, you would then need minimum average daily progress of 160 points per day to finish the rest of the battle pass. So that was something that came as a bit of a surprise, and we'll certainly factor that into any future forecasting of minimal season progress that we look at in the future. I guess that's how you get the tank. If you want to grind away with your time, there is another way to grind through with your wallet, which we will get to. But to overview some of the other features of what we look at with the article, we spend a couple of paragraphs talking about the business end, the gun. That's what everyone wants to know about, particularly with tank destroyers, but something that they seem to care about with most tanks, regardless of class anyway. So, well, I mean, a tank without a gun's pretty boring at the end of the day. We talk about the positioning, the play style, the sort of tactics, and some of the trade-offs that are going to be associated with that vehicle. So if you're interested in picking it up, I strongly encourage you to have a bit of a read through that one. We talk about the ideal ways to equip and crew this vehicle. Now, this doesn't necessarily work for everyone, but I would probably suggest with your commander, focus on the important stuff like Sixth Sense and Vision. Get brothers in arms if at all possible. But the rest of your crew, what you go for, it's going to be pretty easy. But probably focus on concealment as a first priority. As far as your equipment choices go, I've opted to put the gun rammer in the firepower slot. In terms of benefit, I think that making a good DPM great is probably the best use of that firepower slot. The other two slots, I again have gone for vision and concealment, and of course you can switch that up as your confidence level in your vision and concealment varies as you are playing through the tank. If you're still working through your first skill, you might wish to start off with binocular telescope and camouflage net. That might force you into redline play a little bit, and as you develop a bit more confidence with the native vision and concealment of your crew, you might wish to go for the instant gratification afforded by coated optics and low noise exhaust. Further still, if you start developing brothers in arms and all the concealment and all the vision skills, then you might even consider going for agility builds where you might strap on a turbocharger and or an improved rotation mechanism to really give your tank that true second line ability where you're only maybe a grid square away from the front line and still firing and hitting and causing mayhem, and able to follow up with the advance should that advance start to run away. No right or wrong answers to that one. Also worth noting, as an open-topped vehicle, improved ventilation is not an option for ShPTK. Getting into the question of is it worth it? This is the question that I guess will get asked on the basis of those players that might not be grinding away with their time, but rather with their wallets. Short answer is, like, even if ShPTK was complete garbage, which it isn't, it has the unique, for now, characteristic of being the only premium Czechoslovakian tank destroyer in the game. That means if they were to release a Czechoslovakian tank destroyer line, it would be uniquely placed to get those crews up to speed. Now there are a bit of caveats here. There are no tank destroyers, Czech tank destroyers that we're aware of under development or in the super test. So it is a bit of an act of blind faith if you are making the decision to pick up this tank purely for crew training purposes. And that's also on the assumption that if those tech tree tanks are indeed in development, whether you have direct crew compatibility from ShPTK to that tech tree tank were it in fact to exist. But fortunately, this is quite an enjoyable and playable tank in its own right. So you can certainly do what you will with that information. Linking this to the Battle Pass model rather than the traditional marathon model, it brings a couple of benefits. So as a minimum, you'll be looking to pay, if you wanted to buy your way through, you'll be looking at a minimum of 2,500 gold for the Chapter 4 Improved Pass. You'll then be required to buy 40 stages at a cost of 250 gold per stage for a total of 12,500 gold. Now, by comparison, that is quite a lot compared to a premium Tier 8 tank destroyer. If you were to look at the other premium Tier 8 tank destroyers that you can get for gold within the game, and I'm looking at Stridsvagn S1, I'm talking about WZ131 FTGFT, the lots of Chinese letters and numbers, and the AMX CDA 105, they all go for around that 9,500 gold mark, but this is sort of the average that I've come out with. So you're basically spending around 3,000 gold over what it otherwise costs a premium Tier 8 tank destroyer in the game. But this is attached to the Battle Pass system, and the Battle Pass system, you get all this stuff as well that you're paying through the improved rewards. So we've made a bit of an attempt to value all of those different components. So for starters, you get 10 days of premium time, which altogether 1,900 gold. You also get 1.1 million credits, which if you run at the credit exchange rate of 1 gold per 400 credits, that's another 2,750 gold. You also get 3 pieces of Class 1 equipment. If you value each of those components at 600,000 credits each, then altogether that's worth 4,500 gold. You can really see this starting to pick up. Here's where it gets a little bit loopy. You'll also get 4 training guides, which is 4 lots of 100,000 experience points. That is worth 1.6 of the 250,000 experience points manuals. They are worth 2 million each, so 1.6 times 2 million gives you 3.2 million. Divide that by 400 credits per gold. That's a value of 8,000 gold. A little bit of a stretch there. Even more so, 40 universal blueprints. How do we put a gold value on blueprints? Well, at one stage, there was a temporary event there where you could exchange blueprints for training booklets or training manuals. So that 40 of would be convertible to 10 training booklets. 10 training booklets would be worth 2 million credits, the equivalent experience in a training manual, which would be worth 4,000 gold worth of credits at this 1 gold per 400 credits exchange rate. You also get 240 bonds, which the exchange rate for bonds I've set at 1.082 gold per bond, so that is apparently worth 260 gold. That seems like a bit of a stretch, but hear me out. I've calculated that based on the fact that the Chrysler K you can pick up in the garage for 8,200 gold. The Chrysler GF you can pick up for 8,000 bonds. So that's the reason for that particular exchange rate. You get 20 orderly ammo racks. They normally go for 6 bonds each, so using the same conversion factor, that is 130 gold. You also get 48 different personal reserves, and they have varying monetary values available from the premium shop. In this case, I worked that back to 900 gold for the free experience and the credits, and 1,080 gold for the crew experience, and 1,320 gold for the combat experience. So all up, you're looking at arguably a value of over 35,000 gold for a 12,500 gold expenditure. So it's pretty good value, and you could even cherry pick stuff. I mean, you take the tank for 9,500 gold. You take the premium time. You take the equipment. Maybe you mash that all together, and you can satisfy yourself that even if there's a whole heap of stuff in here that you don't actually want, the stuff that you do actually want, well, you could rationalize that quite easily to be representative of quite good value. And this is, of course, assuming that you make no personal progress over the next 10 days in the improved pass, remembering that every 50 battle pass points that you pick up, well, that's going to save you 250 gold. So have a think about that. Now, I do, just as a caveat, I have used this this gold to credit conversion to justify some of these valuations. Look, I don't think the gold to credit conversion is really representative of good value for money. Full disclosure, I have never on an established account bought credits from the premium shop. I have on occasion converted gold into credits, but that's more because I needed the credits to do tank reviews, and Wargaming gives me gold for being a community contributor anyway. So that was probably more for expediency rather than something that I would routinely recommend that tankers do. So a bit of caution. If there's any of this that you're not sure about, then please shoot me a message over Discord at the links below. I'm happy to sort of talk through that. But short answer, is the tank worth it for this amount of gold? Yes, I certainly think it is, certainly with this Battle Pass delivery model. So getting into the gameplay end of our review, this was actually the game I wanted to show you. Unfortunately, we had a few technical difficulties, which meant I couldn't actually save the replay, so I'm really bummed about that. But there was another replay I wanted to show to sort of showcase some of the features about this tank, which we will bring to you directly. So we are loaded in as bottom tiered on fjords, 10s over 8s. So we're going to really need to stick to the core roleplay of this vehicle, and that is as a sniper tank destroyer. So this is what you've come here to see, the Tier 8 Premium Czech Tank Destroyer ShPTK-TVP. Bit of a mouthful, we shall call it ShPTK. Hopefully that sticks, and if it does, well, you heard it here first. Taking up the traditional tank destroyer position to start off with, our base view range, our base concealment is not that great. Medium tanks and light tanks at tier will have a bit of a tendency to outclass us in that respect. We've just got the standard AP shells loaded for now. That penetrates for 270 millimeters. And as we line up on this Object 907, trying for a tracking shot or a lower frontal plate shot. Obviously that's not quite enough, and we've decided to switch out for the heat shells. Now the heat shells will penetrate for 330 millimeters. That is really quite punchy for a tier 8 gun. So again, looking for the weak spots on this Object 907. We're just tracking that penetration indicator around, and we managed to hit the top of the turret there and causing a bit of damage there to the Object 907. Now notice as we fire, you have quite a slow loop of the shell through the air. And I guess that feeds into the low muzzle velocity that really does impact the ability of this vehicle to function as a redline sniper. And as you play through the vehicle, you really need to be sort of developing a bit of confidence with your crew's ability to spot their own targets, or to at least remain hidden. And that'll sort of define how adventurous you want to be with this vehicle. You certainly have the mobility to do it. 55 kilometers per hour forward speed, 20 kilometers per hour reverse. It has good acceleration. And you'll also notice as we're shifting targets between the F line and that J5 position, that as we're turning, we're not dispersing all that much. We're getting to our minimum order of dispersion quite quickly as well. That's due to a combination of things. It is an accurate gun, 0.29 meters per 100 meters dispersion. You have an aim time of 1.25 seconds. I normally regard anything under 2 seconds as quite adequate, but 1.25 is practically light speed. You also don't suffer a lot of dynamic dispersion. I think it's 0.14, 0.14, 0.08 on the turret traverse, hull traverse and hull movement respectively. So really good, just really minimal dynamic dispersion. Your gun doesn't bloom out all that much, and doesn't take a hell of a lot of patience to land a precision shot. We've just unloaded our heat shells for now, given that we've got a few soft targets that are creeping out through that intersection. Unfortunately, we had only sent we'd only sent 2 tanks into that area, and they've met probably 5 enemy vehicles. We've unfortunately been beaten to the punch by our teammate in the Waffenträger Panzer IV, knocking out the Scorpion first. Our T-28 prototype, operated by Mr. Cyberbogan, has gone in to try to spot enemy vehicles. An ISU-152K, however, has started to run the gauntlet up the F line. And we've just noticed it. We're bringing our gun to bear and quick fire. So quite rapid. Once we've realised that target was there, I'd sort of I'd been a little bit fixated on what was downrange here. But once we've seen it, brought our gun to bear, we've been able to knock it out in fairly short order. Now we were firing the standard AP there. One of the real downsides of this vehicle, and I guess one of the balancing features, is 250 hit points of alpha damage on the standard and heat rounds. So you don't have a hell of a lot of damage capacity per shot. You do have quite high damage per minute, however. 2,900 damage per minute is what you can put out with this gun. However, realizing that means being able to fire shot after shot after shot. For a single exposure, for example, a Rheinmetall Borsig Waffenträger will hit for 750 hit points with a single shot. For you to achieve that with ShPTK, you need to hang your ass out in the breeze for a good 10 seconds to get your 3 shots off, assuming they all hit, which you have quite a high first hit probability, and assuming they all penetrate, which you would also assume it does as well, because you have quite good penetration. Even the penetration on the high explosive shells is quite good. 100 millimeters of penetration, which is fantastic, and it hits for 420 hit points. So this tank destroyer is an absolute menace when it comes to engaging softer targets. Now, arguably, we've gone into this game playing a little bit conservatively. We haven't been able to support our team all that effectively, other than perhaps knocking out that ISU-152K that was, well, let's face it, they were just about dead anyway. Between the damage we inflicted to Toddy and their Object 907 and the knockout blow to that ISU-150K, we haven't really dealt all that much damage at all. And we're now in a position that, looking at where our teammates are, they're not really all that able to spot targets for us. So we've decided we are going to take the try to take some initiative, try to move forward, and try to move up to some of the soft cover available on this hill. The friendly Type 61 is also able to move up, but unfortunately, if it moves up into this E4 position, we're probably not going to be all that able to spot it. And it's probably just as well that we did relocate, given we had that Stridsvagn 103 that was possibly moving to light up targets. So we've seen the SU-130PM, we've loaded the high explosive, and we send it back to the garage. 352 hit points inflicted on that vehicle. We would not have been able to do that had we left the standard AP shells loaded. There's the Indian Panzer up the back. They've been able to work over our Barask and knock it out. A lucky follow-up shot there. We've been able to knock it out for 375 hit points. Again, still a low roll for our 420 hit point high explosive shell. We're loaded again. We're engaging the Rheinmetall Borsig Waffenträger. One shot, two shot. Are we going to get the killing shot? No, that belongs to the Type 61. We're then engaged by the Granatenwerfer Tiger P. We send a shot down its general direction, reloading for the follow-up shot. We're fully aimed and send that back to the garage for our 4th kill of the game. Now we also have a Ferdinand last known position out here. We're getting proxy spotted possibly by the Stridsvagn 103. So we're going to try and get off this ridge, and we do it a little bit too quickly and efficiently and end up sending ourselves back to the garage with a bit of a crushing incident. So that was most unfortunate. And as it turns out, the Ferdinand wasn't even there. It had come full circle and come through the F line. So that was most unfortunate for us. The Type 61 moves to engage, and by all accounts, it looks like it's got the drop on them. Unfortunately, the enemy Stridsvagn 103 comes in, aims up on the Type 61, and sends it back to the garage as well. So this is 2-all. The enemy has 2 tank destroyers in reasonably good condition for our single tank destroyer and self-propelled gun. But our Rheinmetall Borsig Waffenträger is entering the fray. Unfortunately, this guy has not got the 15 centimeter main gun. It's just the 12.8 centimeter gun, but certainly taking the hit points off the Ferdinand here. And before the Ferdinand can really turn around to react, he has been able to knock that Tier 8 tank destroyer out of the game. This just leaves a Stridsvagn 103. Now, we're really not sure where that particular vehicle has gone. That being the case, the Rheinmetall Borsig Waffenträger has decided it's going to be a little bit discreet about this and take a bit of a wider angle in the hopes of intercepting it. Now, we do have a 2v1 advantage over the Stridsvagn here. Unfortunately, one of our vehicles happens to be a self-propelled gun, and a little bit of an isolated one at that. So the Stridsvagn 103, it has some real potential to control this game at this point in time. It could head in and pretty well knock out the Granatenwerfer Tiger P in its own right, and then have superior concealment and vision characteristics to really work one over this Rheinmetall Borsig Waffenträger for the rest of the game, and I guess do so with the initiative being closer to our cap than the Rheinmetall Borsig Waffenträger is to theirs. But in this case, the Rheinmetall Borsig are operated by FP the Mum. I'm not sure if that's an anonymized username or not, but that's what we've got from the interface here. They are working the shadows, working the foliage. They're really not sure where this guy's gonna come up. The Stridsvagn 103, it had made some good use of hugging the baseline of this hill earlier, so hoping to catch it out doing that, but unfortunately not to be. So they're coming full circle, and they're going to start trying to work their way back towards the Granatenwerfer Tiger P. So at least they are more likely to be in a position of being able to offer mutual support. Creeping up through the bushes, the Rheinmetall Borsig Waffenträger is able to find the Stridsvagn 103, puts a shot into it with the 12.8 centimeter main armament, and it ducks into a bit of hard cover. Now, this Stridsvagn 103 potentially one-shottable to the German tank destroyer, so it can afford to eat a round. Sends one back into the Stridsvagn 103. Unfortunately, a bit of a low roll. The Stridsvagn 103 left on 26 hit points. It's loading the high explosive. It unfortunately doesn't appear to have had a clear shot there. The Stridsvagn 103 runs the flank. Rheinmetall Borsig Waffenträger turns to shoot, and unfortunately overshoots the target, sending the shell behind it. Is trying to get around the Stridsvagn 103, but artillery comes to the rescue and knocks out the last enemy vehicle for for a finishing position there of 15.3. Now, unfortunately, I don't have results for this game of all the things that can go wrong, did go wrong in the preparation of this video here tonight. So, but what I can tell you, we did manage to get a level 2 mastery badge for our efforts. So, ladies and germs, that is the ShPTK-TVP 100. I guess available for you in the Queen of the Night Battle Pass Marathon, and also quite accessible via the improved pass for quite good value, as we have detailed earlier in this video. Please feel free to message me over Discord if you have any queries about this vehicle. We will be streaming it on our Twitch channel over the next couple of weeks while I still have the rental account available. So if you have any other queries about the tank, well, that's probably a great time to swing by and raise them as well. In the meantime, thank you for swinging by. Please do check out the Wix article at the link below, and take care out there.